Today, I'm going to be talking about one of the most important things that you can do for your health and weight loss goals, which is eating more protein. Eating more protein can be challenging for a lot of reasons. And the first one is, in general, we've become more sensitive as a culture to how important it is to eat more plant-based foods. That may not mean that you're literally vegetarian or vegan, but it means that you're getting a lot of your protein and calories from plant-based sources. This is a good and a bad thing because in some ways what has happened is the more plant-based the trend has gone, the less protein people can end up eating. And it's not inevitable. It just means that the more plant-based you are, the more attentive to the amount of protein you need to be. And that's the challenge, is that it's easier to automatically eat less, whereas when you eat more plant-based, you really should be eating more protein because you may not know this, but your body actually has a harder time breaking down plant-based protein and using it than it would from something very readily bioavailable, like an animal product. So you have to, let's say if your goal is 100 grams of protein, if you're plant-based, I don't know the exact percentage, but you need to aim even higher, probably more like 125 grams of protein. So when it comes to the plant-based lifestyle, even if it just means you're eating a lot more vegetables, even if you do still eat animal products, you might need to eat even more protein than you initially budgeted. And the second reason that it can be really challenging to eat more protein is that anytime you make a big change in your diet, people hope that they're gonna feel amazing right away. And that's a really reasonable expectation in some ways, because if you've improved the quality of your diet, shouldn't you feel better immediately? And the answer is often maybe or no, because if you think about it, your gut has to get used to digesting different types of foods. And that's very common when people start eating more protein, is they'll suddenly feel kind of like distended or bloated. And it's easy in the short term to write it off as, oh, well, that just didn't agree with me. But the reality is it may take time for the digestive enzymes in your stomach to get used to increased amounts of protein and fiber, which is typical when people start eating healthier. So what I would say is, if you have a goal of, let's say, again, 100 grams is kind of a round number, you might want to start slow, especially if you're having trouble achieving it in general. Start with 75 grams and then do like 85 the next week, and then do, maybe 90 the next week, and then see by the end of the month if you can get to 100. And that, coupled with the more fiber you're eating, which is often, again, what people do when they eat healthier, it also causes gastrointestinal distress. So the more used your body gets to digesting these foods, the happier your digestion is going to be, the happier your gut is going to be. You're not going to have to worry that you're going to feel bloated all the time from the amount of protein you're eating. So let's talk about the exact amount of protein you should be aiming for and how to achieve it. Protein is very individual. It has a lot to do with your what's called lean body mass. So you can do this math yourself, and I can provide a calculator if you're interested, if you want to ask me for it, a way to figure out what your lean body mass is. It's based on measurements. You can really accurately estimate it. So lean body mass is anything in your body that's not fat, basically. So, let's say if you have like a really fit 125 pound woman, really fit, her lean body mass may be like 100 pounds. And it's only 25 pounds of fat on her whole body. Let's say you have someone maybe who's 175 pounds, but out of shape, not as muscular, not as lean, more body fat, same maybe height. What you're gonna see maybe is that person has 90 pounds of lean body mass, but obviously a lot more fat mass. So we're not just looking at weight, we're looking at how that weight is distributed in your body and what it's made of. Protein goals can correlate really nicely with lean body mass in that you can also almost go pound for pound. So for example, let's use the example of the first girl. She has 100 pounds of lean body mass. 100 grams of protein a day is a really good goal. And same for the second example. If there's someone who has more fat mass, less muscle mass, then 90 grams of protein would be appropriate if that's her lean body mass. And then over time, if it starts to go, you'll see as measurements change, fat comes down, muscle goes up, that lean body mass increases, your protein goals can rise with the amount of your lean body mass. So I can put that calculator in and you can figure it out for yourself based on your weight and your measurements and other factors. So the shorthand though is if you just take the amount of your actual calorie goal right now and aim for somewhere between 25 and 40%. For most people who do my programs, I really think 30% is a nice middle ground because it's not super high, but it's also high enough that it's gonna be a little bit of a push. People are gonna have to work at it. So it's 30% of your overall caloric intake. In terms of grams, in terms of expression, for most women, again, it's a nice round number. 100 is a great number to aim for. It may not be exactly precise for your lean body mass, but I can guarantee you, you're gonna be really close if you at least hit 100. And I will also say 100 is challenging. So even if that was lower than what your goal should be, it may still be a good goal to work toward because it would have been even harder to hit a higher goal like 125 or 140 or something like that. So there's several different ways to figure it out, but we don't want to get hung up on the details of getting the exact right number. Instead, focus on just achieving a number that feels slightly outside of your comfort zone, like 100 grams, for example, about 30% of your caloric intake. And then let's talk about sources. So I already talked a little bit about bioavailability. If you do eat meat and animal protein, that is going to be the most readily available source of protein to your body. Meaning if you ate 30 grams of protein through lentils, and then another time had 30 grams of protein through beef, let's say, your body's going to have a much easier time taking and breaking down the protein from the beef. I'm not saying that in a way of pro-animal products, it's just the way it works. And the reason it's important to be aware of it is that if you want to put yourself on the fast track to eating more protein, having a decent amount of animal products in your diet will help you. On the flip side, if you are really feeling that plant-based lifestyle and that's something that you want to pursue, just remember you're going to have to eat more of the protein source. So if it is lentils, to use that example, maybe instead of 30 grams of protein in a meal, you need to go for 40 or something like that. You just need to boost up your goal overall to make sure that your body is taking the same amount of protein from it. So we have at the top of the list, very bioavailable protein sources, meat. And I prefer that people eat leaner meats, but also think, fish. Fish is a great source of protein that a lot of people can work into their diets. Even if they have stopped eating meat, you still might eat fish. So that would be like the pescatarian, maybe vegetarian lifestyle. That can be a really good idea. Dairy products, I absolutely love for people to eat more of. Obviously, this is something where there could be a little controversy because some people will argue that dairy is not good for you and we're not meant to eat dairy. Other people will have genuine gastrointestinal concerns about eating more dairy because it makes their stomach upset and they're probably having some like protein issues with digesting the milk. So when it comes to dairy, you really have to decide if it's the right thing for you. If you handle dairy just fine, you should make dairy a very large part of your protein intake because it is cheaper, more accessible, more portable. For a million reasons, it's easier to eat than meat products all day long. So that goes into Greek yogurt, milk, lighter cheeses, like I'm thinking of light mozzarella string cheese. Things like that can make great snacks that you wouldn't necessarily pull out like a hamburger patty to eat at certain times of day. So definitely if you can eat dairy, lean into those lean, protein-rich dairy sources like yogurt and skim milk and things like that. And things don't have to be skim or fat-free, but I will say that people in general, we get enough fat in our diet in America that you don't necessarily need more fat. So if you're going to be eating a lot of dairy, I do recommend having a lighter or a skimmed version just to cut out too much saturated fat out of your diet. Another great animal source of protein is eggs and egg whites, and this fits nicely into a vegetarian diet. So, I mean, it speaks for itself. You can have eggs with breakfast. You can have hard-boiled eggs for snacks. And I also like when people get creative and have things like omelets or frittatas or shakshukas for dinner because they're easy to make. It's kind of a no-brainer. They tend to be very flexible. You can put other things in it that taste good to you. And the end result is you're eating more protein. So then we go into more of the plant-based proteins, and you can probably guess what a lot of these are. So we're thinking lentils, beans, quinoa, tofu, nuts, seeds, etc. And I'm also thinking about high-quality protein powders. only if you do not eat animal products. If you eat animal products, I'm not saying this dogmatically, but I often think that protein powder is a little bit of an overkill if you already eat animal products. If you don't, on the flip side, protein powder can be a great source of protein for you that you may really need. So again, if you're only relying on on plant sources, or it makes up the bulk of your protein, you need to eat more of it in order to hit the same protein level. The disadvantage of plant-based protein from just a macro point of view, not from a health point of view, but just from a macro point of view, is that usually plant-based protein is bound to another macro. It's very unusual in nature, if never maybe, to find a pure protein. So most of the time it's going to be a protein combined with a carb, or a protein combined with a fat, or both. So the more you're eating of plant-based protein, you just have to be really aware of how you're balancing your whole diet, that when you're eating more plant-based protein, that you're also not eating way more fat or way more carbohydrates, because then what happens is you're going to see your overall calories go way up. So it's a bit of a balancing act, and to be completely frank, it's why people can switch their diet to a vegan, a plant-based, or a vegetarian diet with health or environmental or compassionate goals, but there may have been an underlying weight loss goal, and that weight loss goal may not be accomplished because of that balancing act. So it is something just to pay attention to if you are more plant-based. Regardless of where you get your protein, how you eat it, I highly recommend about 30 grams per meal on average. Some of your meals may be as high as 40 grams, some may be as low as like the low 20s, but what I really don't want to see is an actual meal only having 10 grams of protein. That's fine for a snack, and even some snacks I would like to see higher, especially if your lunch and dinner are really far apart in the day. Let's say you eat lunch at like 12 and then dinner's at like 7. I would love to see your afternoon snack be almost like a mini meal where you're taking in quite a bit of protein. Maybe that's a great time for like a smoothie with either protein powder or yogurt or something like that in it. But overall 30 grams per meal. And if you think in doses like that, it's super easy to hit 100 if your doses are that big. If you have 30 at breakfast, 30 at lunch, 30 at dinner, 20 for a snack, you're already at 110. But it sounds so simple when I say it, and in practice, it can be really challenging to achieve. So that is the practice I would say for this week, is to track your protein, pay really close attention to it. Don't just look at calories. Calories is a very important part of the picture, but look at calories and protein, because protein helps you often feel more satisfied. You tend to eat less at other times. It tends to regulate the intake of the other macros, so you may end up eating fewer carbohydrates, fewer fats, because the protein is higher. Once your gut gets used to it, it's a very slow digesting food. So that's partly why people will feel bloated at first, is the body's just not used to a slow digesting food like that, moving so slowly out of the stomach and getting emptied into the rest of the digestive system. So that's actually a good thing once you get used to it, because what that prevents is cravings and needing to eat again in an hour or two, which is extremely helpful for when you're trying to lose weight, being able to space things out just a little bit more. So that is it in terms of protein. If you have questions about it, please feel free to reach out and ask, and have a wonderful day, wonderful week. And if this protein discussion can continue, that would be great.